Hey Covenant Grace Church, Roger Haynes here from Common Ground Church, Cape Town, out in Bloberg. And let me first just start by saying you've got a church in Cape Town that are rooting for you and are stoked with you and just want to breathe wind in your sails. We are just so encouraged and inspired by you guys and just want to say keep it up. I also want to just share a brief message, something that's been on my heart in the last while, and it's with regards to isolation. It's been such an interesting time, hasn't it, over the last while? And one of the things we haven't recognized potentially is just the potential dangers of isolation. It goes all the way back to our forefathers in the Garden of Eden and the very beginning of the downfall of humans and the devastation that came into our lives when Adam and Eve parted from each other and became vulnerable to temptation and towards all kinds of struggles that came their way. They isolated from one another and became vulnerable to all sorts of struggles and devastation that came into their lives. And I want to suggest today that in this season, this COVID season, that whilst we may have picked up some connections, and yes, we've been able to, for many of us, get back to work and get into the office or connect with colleagues or have the odd Zoom chat with a friend, many of us have struggled to stay connected. And I want to suggest that there are some real dangers if we remain disconnected. It was the beginning challenge for our forefathers, and it still today is a radical challenge for us and can cause all kinds of pain. I want to just encourage you today. It's not all bad. It's actually really good. But I want to just remind us of some of the potential dangers of what happens when isolation turns nasty, when it just goes wrong. And for many of us, isolation is one of the things we're going through. And some of the symptoms of isolation, when it's starting to take its toll in our lives, and like I said, it's subtle. It really isn't straightforward and easy to pick up. But some of the things you may pick up if isolation is maybe taking its toll in your life. And to be honest with you, I picked up these symptoms in my own life. I didn't need to look around and point fingers. I started to look inside and realize that some of the lack of real, honest, vulnerable relationships started to subside, and into that came some of these symptoms. Firstly, the tendency to feed negative narratives. We start to believe things like, they're not really as good friends as I thought they were. They've drifted. They don't trust me. I'm failing. I'm not as good as I thought I was at that. All these narratives tend to come into our lives when we haven't got those connections, those people that have maybe been encouraging us just by their sheer presence. We tend to feed negative narratives when we're isolated. Secondly, we tend to lose courage to connect. We don't just feed negative narratives, but the courage to stay connected seems to just dwindle. It's happened in all of our lives. I think of gym or running or any form of exercise. Man, you know how hard it is after taking a break from exercise, how hard it is to get back on the road, to lace up those running shoes and go for a run, to go back into the gym and swipe that card and actually do some meaningful exercise. It's just not easy. But once you get into it, man, the endorphins start to flow and the joy starts to bubble again. It's the same with meaningful connection with people who we're having real life-on-life friendship, where we really are not just greeting each other, not just getting work done together, but actually speaking about some of the real matters of life. When that starts to happen, we grow courage to connect. The less we do that, the less courage we have to connect. Hey, thirdly, we tend to justify our anger. If we're isolating for a season, if we're starting to disconnect from people, we begin to justify our anger. We begin to justify why we're cross with a person, with a scenario, with a situation, with a politician, with a system, whatever it may be. We tend to justify our anger. Why? Because in isolation, we create what's called an echo chamber. We tell ourselves on one side what we believe, and then on the other side, we agree with it. And so we begin to feed the same narrative over and over, and it justifies why we are angry about something. Hey, it causes irritability. It causes just an angstiness, a kind of difficulty to live with us. hey, that's one of the signs that we are overly isolating. Hey, thirdly, we become vulnerable to emotive narratives. We pick the latest movement on social media, and we battle to keep distance and keep a kind of non-emotive connection to it. We always get involved and we pick a side and we start to push hard for it, and it begins to feed our emotional state. Hey, those are symptoms of isolation. In my mind, one of the most dangerous symptoms of isolation is this one, is that we don't draw the connection between our isolation and our irritation and our irritability and where we're at and why we are angry, why we're frustrated, why we are the way that we are. And we can't seem to draw the connection between our lack of honest, real, healthy, God-honoring relationships with the state of our soul. I want to suggest to you and encourage you in this time to not let yourself off the hook when it comes to staying connected and staying connected to people with whom you can share your life. And by the way, this isn't just good for you, it's good for each other. Let me suggest a few things that you could do. Firstly, connect organically. Calls, walks, whatever you do to just stay connected with people whom you value and who you know value you in the life of your community. Connect organically. Just make ways to stay connected. My favorite way at the moment is taking a walk on the promenade with people. We keep our distance, but we connect. Hey, secondly, connect communally. Stick with your community rhythms. It's such an amazing gift that God's given you. I don't know what your church rhythms exactly are. It's probably a life group in the middle of the week, and it's probably a Sunday meeting. Maybe there's one or two other great rhythms, a prayer meeting or something like that. Hey, pick those three, peg them in the diary, and get to as many of them as you possibly can. Why? Because they force you into connection. They force you out of your own bubble, your own echo chamber of your own head, and into some healthy rhythms. Connect organically, connect communally, connect regularly. Hey, keep it tight, keep in rhythm. It's really hard when you lose rhythm. Same with any exercise. Losing rhythm means you lose that sense of continuity. Stay connected and stay regular in your connections. And then finally, connect vulnerably. Connect vulnerably. Try not to keep it superficial. Try not to just go, how are you doing? Like the classic male, how are you doing? Fine. You okay? Fine. Hey, try to share something of the reality of what you're going through, what you're feeling, some of your frustrations, and let people listen. And part of the joy of real meaningful connection is not that you solve each other's problem. It's that you share in each other's challenges. And you begin to realize that you're not alone. And just knowing you're not alone is one of the key gifts of the gospel, is that we get to empathize just like God empathizes with us. Hey, to live out the gospel in this time is to stay connected. And it's my prayer that you will stay connected and stay encouraged in this time. Lots of love to you, Covenant Grace Church.